What is spirituality? What does it mean to be spiritual? How can I be more spiritual? I'll be answering these questions extremely in depth. I believe this video will cover the essence of spirituality deeper than any other video ever created. And if it's not, I'd like to know about it. So if you're interested in what spirituality is and want to know how to be more spiritual, I encourage you to stick around until the end. So without further ado, let's get into this video. So I think most people do not have a proper definition of what the term spirituality actually means. Even dictionaries will give you different definitions. In mainstream society, there exists a prevalent duality between science and spirituality. Many people these days are quick to give the spiritual label to people who might abide by a more new age form of spirituality, who talk about things like crystals and astrologies and chakras and veganism. And others might just attribute the label to anything relating to religion or religious belief. And I cannot blame the portion of the scientific community that considers spirituality to be something totally different than science, considering that religion and many other belief systems can become extremely dogmatic and completely disregard basic science from their worldview. But when this duality is made, it opens the door for science to become dogmatic by closing itself off from the value that many concepts of religion, spirituality, and other schools of thought can provide. Now I'll touch more on this duality later, but what I'm trying to get at is that both of these fields are forms of spirituality. So this duality that exists between the two should not exist at all. What spirituality is at its core is that deep yearning within every human to make sense of reality and connect with a purpose higher than their own self. Questions concerning life after death, the purpose of our existence, and a higher power have been asked by all cultures in history, and that innate ability that all of us have to do that questioning is what makes the human species inherently spiritual. Because every single one of us have just randomly found ourselves in this body in a vast and complex world, and we really have no idea why. It's all so mysterious. So it's just natural with us being a complex and intelligent organism to try and make sense of it. Christianity, Buddhism, astrology and New Age spirituality, and even science, rationality, and atheism, along with other schools of thought, are all expressions of man's spiritual nature. But it is important to be aware that the function of your ego mind is to create meaning for itself so it has a sense of direction in life. So as a byproduct of that, it is going to fill in the void of not knowing the truth of its existence with beliefs, which essentially give the ego the illusion of knowing the truth. But if the beliefs are met with 100% radical honesty, the person would at least acknowledge that the adopted beliefs probably are not completely true. And it is hard for the ego mind to come to terms with the idea that their way of viewing reality might not be true at all, or only is partially true. And this is why religion, other ideologies, and even rationality and atheism can become dogmatic. This is why literal wars have been fought over a clashing of beliefs. Because the way of thinking you subscribe to that gives you meaning and tells you what's true and how to live life is literally everything for you. For many people, it becomes their identity, literally. To give that up would mean a part of them is dying, and no ego would ever want that. But what happens when you adopt a belief system and you say this way is true, this is the answer, this is the way we ought to live, is that you lose the awe and the profundity that the universe holds for you. With this, your existence becomes demystified. Literally, you're sapped of your spirituality. And when you're sapped of your spirituality, you become a robot, like a sheep, just going along with whatever you're told to do, with whatever your belief system says you should do, because you've lost that spark. You've lost that awe for the beauty and intelligence of this existence. So as an example, someone who abides by Christianity, their way of going about life is something like, all right, I'm going to follow what the book says because, it's the Holy Bible. And as long as I do that, I'll ensure my entrance to heaven. If I mess up, I gotta confess my sins. And then a Muslim will be like, all right, I just gotta follow the Quran, pray 5 times a day, do some other stuff, and I'm good. And an atheist will think, all right, well, there's no God, there's no higher power, in a sense, my life is ultimately meaningless, and I'll just try my best to make something out of this life that's enjoyable. So what's sad is that each school of thought gets stuck in their own bubble, and they don't want to unify with the others, because they all directly conflict somewhat with what they believe. Religion often becomes super dogmatic and dismisses basic science and logic from its worldview. But also science has become hyper-analytic and super rational by trying to attribute everything to a material cause, and this trying to logically explain and quantify everything rationally demystifies existence if you take it too seriously, and again, with this, you lose touch with the awe and the profundity of existence. Science will tell you, oh, you just evolved, you're just stardust, it's just a coincidence that you exist. And I don't reject any of this. It's like, okay, I get that, but why? Like, why does anything even exist at all? Why is there's something rather than nothing? What is consciousness? The fact that this universe is capable of evolving something as complex and intricate as myself is, to me, literally the most beautiful and amazing thing ever. And the fact that mainstream science doesn't seem to attribute any intelligence or sentience to this universe that literally gave rise to all of our existences, that gave rise to this fucking screen that you're watching me on, well, I think that way of thinking is incredibly, incredibly foolish. And that this hyper-analyticness, this hyper-rationality can only go so far in leading one towards the truth. And I'm not saying we reject science. It's much better to be scientifically minded than dogmatically religious. What's validated scientifically should be incorporated into your worldview. I'm just telling you to acknowledge its limitations. Science isn't going to tell you anything about love and embodying unconditional love. Science won't tell you much about enlightenment and unity consciousness. Science can explain consciousness, and science won't tell you how to be a good person and how to create a better world. So all of it only goes so far. And if you're really honest with your investigations, no matter what belief system you adopt, there's always going to be that nagging feeling that there's more to it, that you could be wrong, that you don't completely know, and that you're not satisfied, because you're still suffering and you don't feel whole. So what do? All schools of thought seem to have their limitations. There's not one way that seems to be the truth. So what do I believe? Well, the solution is not to believe anything at all. If you're like me, believing something is not satisfactory. I don't want to believe something, I want to know. And I actually want to know. I don't just want to adopt the belief system in order to make my ego feel like it knows. No, I want to actually know. And this is where deeper forms of spirituality come into play. And these deeper forms of spirituality aren't just about believing something or knowing something intellectually. It's not mental masturbation. These deeper forms are about becoming directly conscious of the nature of something. It's about aligning yourself with the highest wisdom possible. And it's about becoming the purest vehicle of unconditional love that you can. Because what leads someone here is not simply just a nagging to make sense of reality and find purpose. That's certainly part of it, don't get me wrong, but if all someone wanted to do was that, they'd probably be fine just going about believing a belief system. What leads someone to deep spiritual work is a very deep yearning to fully understand, to fully unify oneself, to heal all divisions within oneself, and in the world too. People tend to get here through a very strong desire to connect with Source, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. And many people get here through a lot of suffering and just having very sensitive empathy centers. I would say I'm a little bit of all three of those. I've always been extremely interested in the nature of reality my entire life. I remember first seeing the movie Interstellar, and that really inspired awe and made me marvel at and love the universe, even though back then I was very scientific and atheist-minded. And in addition to that, I was lost in my ego all of my teenage days, just like pretty much everyone else. But it's not in the sense that I had confidence and swagger and was cocky. I had a big ego in the sense that my ego turned in on itself, and anything I'd do wrong, I'd beat myself up about. So I'd reminisce and ruminate a lot. I was depressed a lot. I would obsess over things. I had a fairly low self-esteem. And when I got heartbroken by past girlfriends, that kind of sent me spiraling. And being in that depression, I would look out at the world and see how much suffering there is, how evil it can be, and then in that I would spiral even more, making me feel hopeless. And then, I suffered quite a bit because of that. It was a struggle that I dealt with the majority of my time in my teenage days, and no one really knows that about me because I kept it all in and didn't express it. And then a few months after I graduated high school, I had a mystical experience where I saw through the illusion of the self, aka the ego, and saw reality as one whole, perfect, and totally unified field. And just from integrating that, my suffering has gone down a lot, and the quality of my life has improved dramatically. But also being in that state, I realized that there are greater truths that religious prophets had been pointing towards the entire time. It's just that their followers had kind of twisted their message and worshipped them instead of trying to be like them. Jesus meant when he said something like, "The kingdom of heaven is found within." What I get is that heaven is not some place that you physically go to. It's where you are when there's no more division within you. And when you have no more division within you, that also means that there's no perceived difference between you, which is the subject, and the entire world, which is the object. Self and object merge. You and the world are literally one. Everything in reality is interconnected and ultimately one. And to realize that through direct experience is 10 billion times more powerful than just thinking about it and feeling like you know it intellectually. It's the self literally dissolving into the universe and unifying with it. And with this, you wake up to your nature as the entire universe, or God, whatever you want to call it. And with this state, it becomes so much easier to embody unconditional love because you're not valuing one thing over another, whereas previously you went about life valuing your ego, your body mind, as the most important thing in existence. Imagine being in a state where everything is seen of equal importance. This is why people worship the fuck out of Jesus and Buddha 2,000 years later, because they were some of the first humans to ever realize this and embody unconditional love. And that strikes a chord in every single human's heart. Deep down, everyone yearns to be like this. Everyone yearns to be in the kingdom of heaven because it is there that they are aligned with the ultimate truth, which is unconditional love, and it is there that they no longer suffer. And it is in this area that science completely misses the mark. At some point, you have to stop believing, you have to stop studying, you have to stop analyzing, and you have to become. And that's what spirituality at its core is all about. It's about healing all divisions within yourself until your ego literally dissolves and you become the universe. The kingdom of heaven will only come to earth once people realize this and start becoming. So I hope this inspired you to start pursuing a deeper and more true form of spirituality. It's very difficult to heal yourself of all divisions, because what happens is when you try and go to do this work, wounds arise, patterns that have been ingrained into your psyche for years upon years play upon you, and it's extremely difficult to heal. So you have to tackle the problem from a number of ways. But yeah, you're probably wondering how to get started. But I'm going to have more videos about that in the future. There's other videos on YouTube and resources you can go to. And I probably already have some past videos that will help you out. But that's really it, guys. Check me out on Instagram. Send me a DM. I'll try to respond to all DMs. If you want to support me on a higher level, consider joining my Patreon. I also just created a website called thecuriousmindsoferarth.com, so check that out. Links to everything will be in the description below. And that's all I got for this video, guys. And please give it a like. And as always, have a great day and peace.